Jane, you seriously need a break from all these dusty books. It's Clara's birthday bash tonight. You gotta join us. Liz practically commanded, her voice laced with that mix of concern and exasperation she reserved just for me. I'm Jane, a 34-year-old English literature professor, more comfortable dissecting Shakespeare's sonnets than navigating social gatherings. Fine, Liz. But if it's a snooze-fest, I'm holding you responsible, I replied, marking my place in Hamlet with a sigh. That evening, Clara's party was in full swing, a whirl of laughter and clinking glasses. That's where I met Alex. He was the finance guy, his world of stocks and assets as distant from my literary haven as could be. Yet, something clicked, a spark neither of us could deny. Shakespeare, huh? That's pretty highbrow. I'm more about the Wall Street Journal than the Globe Theatre, Alex joked, his smile infectious. I chuckled, the warmth in his eyes softening my usual reserve. Well, perhaps I can show you that literature has its own charms. Might even teach you a thing or two about the human condition, I quipped, finding myself surprisingly at ease. The conversation didn't skip a beat, flowing as smoothly as the evening breeze. Soon, our casual meets turned into late-night talks, and before we knew it, we were inseparable. The idea of us seemed as natural as the turning of pages in one of my books. Meeting Alex's mother, Elaine, was like stepping into a scene from a novel. She exuded warmth and elegance, her demeanor as inviting as the home she welcomed me into. Jane, dear, it's so wonderful to finally meet you. Alex hasn't stopped talking about you. I feel like I know you already, Elaine greeted me, her voice a soothing melody. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you too, Elaine. Alex speaks so highly of you, I responded, genuinely touched by her kindness. The day Alex came to visit my family home was a chapter on its own. The awe in his eyes was unmistakable as he took in the sprawling estate, the tangible proof of my father's success. Your family's place is something else, Jane. Your dad must have a Midas touch with investments, Alex remarked, his voice a mix of admiration and something else I couldn't quite place. He's done well for himself, indeed. The stock exchange has been kind to him, I replied, my pride in my family's achievements shining through. My parents embraced Alex with open arms, his charm and apparent adoration for me sealing his place in their hearts. The stage was set, our roles as the perfect couple cemented. The wedding was a dream, a celebration of love and promises of a shared future. The days following our wedding were supposed to be the happiest of my life. Instead, they turned into a relentless storm of heartache and dread. Dad, the strongest man I knew, was suddenly confined to a hospital bed, his strength waning under the cruel grip of cancer. The hospital's sterile, white walls became our grim reality, the beeping of machines a constant, unwelcome soundtrack. One bleak evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the hospital room, Dad called me over with a feeble gesture. His eyes, once so full of life, now mirrored the fatigue and pain he was enduring. Jane, my darling, he began, his voice barely above a whisper, I need you to be strong. I've made arrangements for you, for after I'm gone. There's an inheritance, $2 million. It's yours, my dear. I want you to have a secure future. I gripped his hand, the cold reality of his words piercing my heart. Dad, please, don't talk like that. You're going to get through this. But before I could absorb the gravity of his revelation, Alex, who had been lingering by the door, stepped forward, his reaction sending a chill down my spine. $2 million, sir? That's quite a fortune. I mean, Jane, we need to think about how to manage this blessing, he said, his tone unsettlingly eager, his gaze not meeting mine. The days turned into an agonizing cycle of hospital visits and silent, tension-filled nights at home. Alex's demeanor had shifted, the man I had fallen in love with seemed consumed by thoughts of the inheritance, his warmth replaced by a cold, calculating distance. One night, as we sat in the dim glow of our living room, the silence between us thick and suffocating, Alex broke the stillness, his words like a cold gust in an already frigid room. Jane, we need to talk about the future, about the inheritance. Think about it, we could really turn our lives around. A luxury home, maybe travel the world. It's time to start planning, don't you think? He urged, his eyes not quite meeting mine. I stared at him, disbelief and anger swirling within me. Planning? My dad is lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life, and you're here making plans for a future splurge? Is that all you care about, Alex? The money? He recoiled, as if my words were physical blows. No, Jane, you've got it all wrong. I'm just trying to look out for us, for our future. I didn't mean to. But his words rang hollow, the apology a feeble attempt to mask the naked greed that had seeped into his voice. In that moment, a painful truth began to dawn on me. The man I had vowed to spend my life with was a stranger, his thoughts not on the profound loss we were about to face, but on the financial gain it would bring. Life after Dad's diagnosis was like walking through a never-ending fog. My home, once a place of laughter and warmth, felt cold, the air thick with unsaid words and hidden agendas. Elaine, Alex's mom, came into our lives like she was the cavalry, ready to save the day. But her eyes, sharp and calculating, told a different story. Jane, honey, you're worn to a thread, Elaine said one evening, her voice smooth but with an edge that made me uneasy. Let me help around here. You shouldn't carry all this alone. I was too tired, too beaten down by the relentless waves of worry, to argue. Thanks, Elaine. I appreciate it, I really do, I replied, trying to muster a smile. But the real storm was still brewing, quietly, sneakily. That night, Elaine came to my room with a small bottle in her hand. Jane, you look like you could use some real rest. These will help you sleep. Trust me, she said, pushing the bottle of pills towards me. Something in her insistence set off alarm bells in my mind, but the promise of a few hours free from my racing thoughts was too tempting. All right, I'll give them a try. Thanks, Elaine, I said, though a part of me was screaming to throw the pills away. No sooner had she left than whispers from the living room reached my ears, a low murmur of conspiracy that pulled me out of my bed and towards the door. I cracked it open, the sliver of light from the living room casting long shadows on the floor. Alex's voice, usually so warm and loving, was cold, almost cruel. She's out like a light, Mom. Those pills knock her right out. We can talk business now, he said, a hint of glee in his tone that turned my blood to ice. Elaine's reply was a quiet, venomous chuckle. Perfect. Now, about that inheritance. Half of it is legally yours, you know. We're talking about a serious cash injection. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were the people who were supposed to be my family, my support. Instead, they were plotting like villains in one of the tragedies I taught in class. Alex's next words were a punch to the gut. Half? That's kids' play, Mom. I want the whole pie. We need to figure out how to get Jane to sign it all over. Once I have the cash, I can cut her loose. I stood there, my hand on the doorknob, feeling like the floor had just dropped away from under me. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a full-blown conspiracy, a plan to rob me of my inheritance, my dignity, my life as I knew it. The morning sun did little to brighten the heavy atmosphere in the house after I uncovered Alex and Elaine's despicable scheme. Sitting at the kitchen table, the untouched coffee in front of me turned cold, a stark reminder of the chilling conversation I had overheard. The betrayal felt like a gaping wound, and I was at a loss, unsure how to navigate this treacherous storm. Mom entered the kitchen, her steps firm, her presence always a beacon of strength in our home. She noticed my distress immediately, her perceptive eyes missing nothing. Jane, what's wrong? You're as pale as a ghost. Talk to me, she urged, her voice a blend of concern and command. I hesitated, the weight of betrayal heavy on my tongue. But seeing the unwavering support in her eyes, I found the courage to confess. Mom, it's Alex and Elaine. I overheard them last night. They're plotting, scheming to take Dad's inheritance, and then, they plan to leave me with nothing. The kitchen fell silent, the air thick with tension. Mom's face remained stoic, but her eyes were sharp, a storm brewing in their depths. "Is that so?" she said calmly, her voice betraying no hint of the rage I knew she must be feeling. "Well, they've picked the wrong family to mess with. We're not pawns in their little game, Jane. We're the ones who'll be calling checkmate." Her words were like a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of despair. "But how, Mom? They've got everything planned out." "It's like they've been setting this trap for a long time," I replied, the enormity of the situation threatening to overwhelm me. Mom's smile was thin but determined. "Planning is one thing, executing is another. They think they're clever, but they're not the only ones who can play this game. We need to be strategic, think 2 steps ahead." The kitchen became our war room, the table a battleground where strategies were formed and tactics were laid out. "First, we need to secure your assets, make sure they can't get their hands on what's rightfully yours," Mom said, her mind racing through the legal labyrinths. "But Mom, the inheritance is huge, and it's all in my name. How can we protect it from them?" I asked, the problem seeming insurmountable. She gave me a look that was both fierce and reassuring. "We'll consult with the best lawyers, set up trusts, do whatever it takes. Your father didn't work his whole life for his legacy to fall into the hands of vultures." As the plan took shape, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. "Mom, you're incredible. I don't know what I'd do without you." Her hand reached across the table, gripping mine with a strength that bolstered my resolve. "You're your father's daughter, Jane, strong and smart. You'll never have to face anything alone. Now, let's put our plan into action and show those snakes they've bitten off more than they can chew." The day of the will reading was like the calm before the storm. The notary's office was stark and formal, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning in my heart. Alex and Elaine were there, their faces poorly masked with faux solemnity, but their eyes, hungry and calculating, betrayed their true intentions. The notary, a stern-faced man with a no-nonsense air, cleared his throat, breaking the tense silence. "We are gathered here to read the last will and testament of Mr. James Harrington. As per his wishes, the contents of the will are to be disclosed in the presence of his immediate family." Alex leaned in, a wolfish grin barely concealed. "This is it, Jane. Our new beginning," he whispered, his breath cold against my ear. I stiffened, repulsed by his proximity and the implication of his words. Before I could respond, the notary began to speak, his voice formal and detached. "Mr. Harrington bequeathed the sum of $2 million to his daughter, Jane Harper." A gasp escaped Elaine, her facade crumbling for a moment to reveal the greed that lay beneath. Alex's hand twitched, a visceral reaction to the mention of the money. He was about to congratulate me, no doubt seeing dollar signs, when the notary continued. "However, it is also stated here that Mr. Harrington incurred debts amounting to $2.5 million. The room went cold. Alex's face drained of color, his earlier excitement replaced by shock and disbelief. Elaine's mouth opened and closed, a fish out of water, her plans unraveling before her eyes. "This can't be right," Alex stammered, his composure shattered. "There must be some mistake." The notary, unfazed, pushed forward a stack of documents. "I assure you, everything is documented and legal. Mr. Harrington's assets and liabilities are now passed on to his next of kin." Elaine's eyes darted between the papers and my stoic face. "But that means, half of the debt is Alex's responsibility too?" "Yes, ma'am. According to the law, marital assets and liabilities are shared," the notary confirmed, his voice devoid of sympathy. The revelation hit Alex and Elaine like a physical blow. Their dream of wealth had turned into a nightmare of debt. Elaine's earlier warmth vanished, her true nature, venomous and self-serving, coming to the forefront. "We're not paying for this. It's her father's mess," Elaine hissed, her earlier facade of the doting mother-in-law gone. Alex, desperation creeping into his voice, turned to me. "Jane, we need to sort this out. You can't let this happen." I looked at him, the man I once loved, now a stranger driven by greed and deceit. Sort this out? Alex, you made your intentions clear. You're not in this for me or for us. You're in this for the money. The room was thick with tension, the notary a silent observer to the drama unfolding before him. In that moment, the storm broke, the veil lifted, revealing the true colors of the people I had once called family. But as I stood there, facing the betrayal and the mountain of debt before me, I knew I wasn't alone. Mom's hand found mine, her grip firm and reassuring. "We'll handle this, Jane. Together," she whispered, her voice a bastion of strength. Alex and Elaine, initially struck dumb by the revelation, quickly erupted into a whirlwind of fury and disbelief. "This is insane," Alex bellowed, his face contorting with anger. "Are you seriously telling me this pile of papers is for real? Show them again, this can't be happening." The notary, a pillar of calm amidst the storm, methodically laid out the documents once more. Each line, each number, was a testament to a reality they couldn't escape. Elaine, her composure shattered, turned her venom towards me. "You knew, didn't you? You and your mother planned this. You're trying to drown us in your family's mess." That's when Mom stood up. Her presence filled the room, a quiet force amidst the chaos. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "My husband had his faults, his vices. The gambling, the debts, they were his burden. And now, according to the law, they are shared by Jane and Alex." Elaine's face was a mask of rage, her earlier facade of kindness nowhere to be seen. "We're not paying for someone else's mistakes. We won't let this happen." Cornered and desperate, Alex played his final, desperate card. "If that's how it's going to be, then fine. I want a divorce. And in that agreement, we'll make it crystal clear, neither of us gets anything from the other. No claims, no money, no property. Nothing." His words, meant to intimidate, only fueled my newfound resolve. "A divorce? That's the best idea you've had in a long time, Alex. Let's make it official. You walk away empty-handed. No ties, no debts, no nothing." The agreement was drafted with clinical precision, a clear, unambiguous document that severed the ties that once bound us. We signed it, each stroke of the pen marking the end of a chapter, the end of a farce disguised as a marriage. After signing the divorce papers, the heavy door of the notary's office closed behind us with a thud that felt final. The crisp air outside did little to clear the heaviness that hung over me. Alex and Elaine, their masks of pretense thoroughly discarded now, couldn't contain their contempt. "Well, Jane, looks like you're stuck with the short end of the stick. $500,000 in debt. That's quite a hole you're in," Alex sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. Elaine's laugh was cold, void of any warmth she once feigned. "You really thought you could outsmart us? Enjoy paying off your father's mess." Just then, Mom stepped forward, her demeanor calm but with an undercurrent of steel. "You two might want to hold off on your celebrations. You see, there's more to this story." Alex scoffed, his arrogance unshaken. "What could you possibly say to change anything now, Mrs. Harrington?" Mom's smile was enigmatic, a prelude to the revelation that was about to turn the tables. "Well, for starters, Jane's not alone in this. I'm here, and unlike what you've been led to believe, the real financial genius in this family has always been me." Elaine's smirk faltered, confusion clouding her features. Alex's expression mirrored his mother's, disbelief and curiosity warring on his face. "I've been the one managing the successful investments, the stock market ventures, not my late husband. My net worth? It's currently around $70 million. And yes, Jane is my sole heir." The impact of Mom's words hit Alex and Elaine like a physical blow, their smugness evaporating, replaced by shock and a dawning realization of the grave miscalculation they had made. Alex, the color draining from his face, stammered, "$70 million? But that means..." Mom's gaze was unwavering, her voice firm. It means, Alex, that you and your mother have been chasing shadows while ignoring the real treasure. Jane's inheritance from me will secure her future. As for the debts left by her father, consider them settled. I won't have my daughter burdened by them. Elaine's mouth opened and closed, words failing her for the first time. Alex, his knees seemingly unable to support him, sank to the ground, his earlier bravado shattered. Please, Jane, I didn't know. I was wrong. Forgive me, he pleaded, his voice barely a whisper, the mask of the cunning strategist gone, leaving only a desperate man in its wake. But it was too late for apologies, too late for regrets. I looked down at the man I once loved, now a stranger groveling at my feet. Forgiveness is earned, Alex, not begged for. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. Turning my back on Alex and Elaine, Mom and I walked away, their pleas and protests fading into the background. The last laugh was indeed ours, but it wasn't one of triumph or joy. It was a laugh that acknowledged the end of a painful chapter and the beginning of a new, hopeful journey. The debt, the deceit, the heartbreak, they were all behind us now. Ahead lay a path of healing and rebuilding, with the strength and wisdom of a bond that no storm could break. The last laugh was a promise of brighter days, of a future where the shadows of the past no longer loomed over us. It was the laughter of freedom, of liberation from the chains of greed and betrayal. And as we stepped into the light of a new dawn, it was the laughter that heralded the beginning of a new chapter, written on our own terms, in our own time. The dust had settled, and the dawn of a new day brought clarity and a profound sense of peace. My life, once entangled with Alex and Elaine's deceit, was now my own. Yet, the echoes of their betrayal hadn't faded completely. Alex, in a last-ditch effort to salvage what he had lost, showed up on my doorstep, his eyes hollow, his stance one of desperation. Jane, please, you have to listen to me. I was wrong, terribly wrong. Can't we just start over, forget all that happened? He pleaded, his voice a mix of regret and fear. I looked at him, the man I once thought I knew, and felt nothing but detachment. Start over? After everything you did? Alex, you don't seem to understand. It's over. There's nothing left to say. Before he could respond, a sharp knock interrupted our standoff. Two men, faces stern and purposeful, stood at my doorstep. Are you Jane Harper? We're here about the debts your husband accrued. He's been borrowing money, making some risky deals, and it's time to settle up. The news didn't shock me as much as it might have before. Alex's capacity for deception seemed boundless. But I was prepared, the pain and betrayal I had endured had forged a resilience I never knew I had. I invited them in, offering a seat but not comfort. I understand this is a difficult situation, but I'm afraid you're knocking on the wrong door. Alex's face went pale, his eyes darting between me and the creditors, the reality of his situation sinking in. I calmly presented the divorce papers, the ink dry but the words echoing the finality of our severed ties. As you can see, we're no longer connected legally. Any debts he incurred are his and his alone. We made it explicitly clear in our divorce agreement, no claims on each other's assets or debts. The creditors scanned the documents, their expressions turning from frustration to understanding. Seems like you've got everything in order, ma'am. We're sorry to bother you. We'll take this up with Mr. Alex Harper directly. As they stood up to leave, Alex reached out, desperation clear in his voice. Jane, please, you can't let them do this. I'm ruined without your help. I looked at him, a man drowning in the consequences of his own greed and deceit. Alex, you made your choices. Now you have to live with them. It's time you faced your own storms. With the closing of the door, the chapter of Alex and Elaine finally ended, their presence in my life nothing more than a harsh lesson learned. The dawn of this new day wasn't just the rising of the sun. It was the rising of a stronger, wiser me, a woman who had weathered the storm and emerged not just intact, but empowered.